Well, hello everyone, and if you have been following us as we have been going to EULAR, I got to look at it because it changed their name, which is the European Alliance of Associations for Rheumatology 2021 Congress, then thank you for following us, and we are here for another debrief. This is debrief number 3. You can find all of the other debriefs on our YouTube channel. And let's tell you a little bit about who's here at the table and why we're doing this. So I'll just start. My name is Tiffany Robertson, and I am the CEO of International Foundation for Autoinflammatory Arthritis, or AiArthritis for short, person living with axial spondyloarthritis. And I'm tuning in from St. Louis, Missouri in the United States. I'm going to hand it over to Miss Deb Constein.
Hey everybody, I'm Deb Constein. I am tuning in from Madison, Wisconsin area, and it's a beautiful day, hot day here. And I am a patient that also has a rheumatoid type disease. It's rheumatoid arthritis and lots of comorbidities. Had it since I was 13 years old, and always looking to learn more about it.
Awesome. All right, Patrice.
Hi, everyone. My name is Patrice Johnson. I live in Northern California. I've been living with rheumatoid arthritis for the last 10 years. And this is officially my second virtual EULAR Congress. Just loving it. Loved last year. And this is just as great as well.
Awesome. All right, let's go to Leslie.
Hi everyone, I'm Leslie Welsbacher. I am in the Metro Detroit area, and I was diagnosed with lupus and rheumatoid arthritis in 2008 at the age of 22. And this is my first time attending EULAR, and it's been very exciting.
And Leslie is also a fantastic blogger. Why don't we quickly, so we don't forget at the end, mention that.
All right, thank you. You can find me at Getting Closer to Myself. That's my blog, and it's gettingclosertomyself.blogspot.com.
Awesome. All right, and last but certainly not least, Miss Katie.
Well, hi, I'm Katie Simons. I am also reporting from the Metro Detroit area, and I also have been living with rheumatoid arthritis for quite some time. I was diagnosed about over 19 years ago. And this is also my first time going to EULAR, and it's been very exciting.
So you were -2 at the time of diagnosis.
I was what?
I'm -2 years old. Katie always is told she looks like she's super young. She's actually in her 30s, but she's always told she looks like, we told her yesterday she could be one of those spies that go back to high school and nobody would be the wiser. So anyway, you might see some of us have backdrops here, and that is because EULAR is again virtual for the second year, and usually we are attending in person and also have extended groups that are kind of on the ground and working with us remotely as well. So that's why you see 2 Paris, the Eiffel Towers in the background, and then it looks like I'm in a very crowded session and Deb's just hanging out by herself.
It's virtual, so those conference rooms at EULAR in Paris are empty.
That's true. That's very true. So we're simulating a little bit of everything. So how these work is our organization, our mission is to help other people living with these diseases like us to be able to have opportunities to have a seat at the table so that we can learn alongside other stakeholder groups, and then together we can work to solve problems that impact education, advocacy, and research. But in order to do that, in order to solve the problems, we have to be in the know. We have to know what the issues are, the current research. We need to learn what the other stakeholders are learning and really immerse ourselves in that. So that's the first reason that we go. And then also as an organization, because we want other people, we've got Leslie coming, and Patrice is coming with us for the second time. As she said, she's been a volunteer with us for a few years. And then we also have to give shout out to Eileen, but she's not on here right now, but Eileen Davidson, you may know her as Chronic Eileen, is also going with us. And the idea is as well that we are here as people living with the diseases. So we are open to questions. If you see anything that we're talking about and you want to learn a little bit more, you have a question, there is no silly question. We welcome you to let us help you understand the research that's happening. So what are we going to talk about today? We are going to talk about precision medicine and personalized medicine. And first and foremost, what is that? What is the difference? Well, some people, some areas in the world, they don't differentiate it, but there has been a movement towards differentiating the two, particularly as medicines are starting to be more precise. So when you think of personalized medicine, think about all of the different ways that you receive therapy or therapeutic. So it could be pharmaceutical, it could be exercise, it could be diet. It also is how you prefer. So it could be the method of application. Do you want an infusion, or are you more of a pill person? You know, you don't like the needles at all, or you don't like the infusion. So all of that comes into personalized medicine. And then precision medicine moves forward to specifically science. So think biomarkers, blood markers, different things that are happening on a molecular level in our bodies, so that science can develop treatments that will target those particular things happening in our bodies. So that is the difference between the two. And we're going to cover a little bit of both, because they talked about diet, which was great. We actually talked about exercise. Patrice and I saw that one. And that was, I think, in debrief number 2. They're all running together. I don't remember which one it was now. I'm sorry. But we did talk about that as well, and how inflammation is proven in research to be controlled. So all of this stuff is really important to talk about, because I think we all can agree on one thing: there is not one size fits all treatment for any one of us, and a combination of personalized and precision, I personally believe is the way of the future. So we're going to start off with talking about diet, and then I'm going to swing back and we're going to talk a little bit about treatments. I'm going to give you a little history of treat to target and what that all means. But let's first go, I'm going to hand it off to Deb. I'm the only one here that did not go to the session, not because I didn't want to or there wasn't interest. We're patients. We cannot do everything, right? We can do what we want. So I'm going to simulate what you all watching would be, and that is the audience. So Deb, take it away.
Awesome. So there was a session, and to give you a quick background about myself, I graduated from college with dietetics and biology double degree, and dietetics is right up my alley. I am medically retired now, but again, I still like to bring everything forth. And, you know, I kind of geek out because I was looking at everybody's notes on the page, and mine's like a 7-page like typed document thing, and everybody else has like 1 or 2 pages. So again, they were hitting the highlights. I was getting into the nitty gritty. So the session was called, Are We What We Eat? The Role of Dietary Intervention in Rheumatic and Musculoskeletal Diseases. What should I tell my patients with RMD, so with rheumatology type diseases, about diet? So Elena Nickforo, and I'm killing her name, I know I am. She follows me on Twitter and I follow her on Twitter. So I realized that after watching the session, but she's actually a rheumatologist, and I would have thought she was a dietitian with how specific she was with everything and talking all the science behind everything. But she is a rheumatologist, and she's basically recaps at the end of what she tells her patients, and she breaks it down into several pieces. As far as diet goes, you know, one of the first things she talked about is the type of diet that you choose matters. So the Western diet is typically what we use in the United States versus other countries, versus the Mediterranean diet, versus the vegan diet, things like that. So any of you guys want to talk about what the Western diet includes? And
She actually, she showed a slide, and I wish I could bring that up. And it had a burger. I think it looked like a cheeseburger with fries, onion rings, a slice of pizza, a soda. Am I missing anything else?
Donut, soda.
Oh, okay. So she was saying that that is a lot of the Western diet, and I'm assuming she means us. I mean, it's like all my favorites, but I don't eat those.
I have to interject with kind of a funny story, because you just said that with the Western diet. So I was attending a panel, patient panel, and it was, there were different patients flown in from around the world. And because I was from the United States and one of the only few, when we all were released for the evening, we were going to go to dinner. And some of the patients from Europe kept saying, well, Tiffany, you're from the United States. Where should we go? We need to get American food. And there's all these Irish pubs and Mexican restaurants and Chinese food. And I'm like, if you want true American food, we have to get a burger or a hot dog. Like, and so some of them looked at me, they were so confused that I said, no, the food here is like a mix of everything, but the traditional is only that. So anyway, it was kind of a sad moment for me to realize we don't have a lot that's ours.
I get it, yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
So basically what they do is they say that the Western diet is the greatest enemy of chronic inflammatory conditions, which is diseases like lupus and rheumatoid arthritis, spondyloarthritis, JIA, those type of diseases. It is really high in refined carbohydrates, really high in salt, really high in added sugar. She made a really big point of saying we're talking about added sugar, not the natural sugars that are in fruits and other types of things. Tiffany, you look like you're confused.
No, I'm trying to look up the past debrief so I can reference.
Got it.
It's
Okay.
Crazy.
I thought you were like, what is she talking about?
No, don't mind me. Go ahead.
It also talked a lot about that diet is also very high in omega-6 fatty acids. So you might wonder what the difference between omega-6 fatty acids and omega-3 fatty acids, for instance. Omega-3 fatty acids are the healthier versions, like olive oil, soybean oil, flaxseed oil, walnut oil, those type of oils, versus the omega-6, which are corn oil, soybean oil, peanut oil, cottonseed oil, things like that. And truly the scientific difference is just the placement of a double bond in the fatty acids. So, I mean, it's just so crazy that one can be healthy and one can be really bad for you. So it's just the placement of a double bond. So going back to chemistry and all that fun stuff.
She mentioned the oily fishes like mackerel and sardines and salmon. She didn't say anything about tuna, and tuna is oily. I buy the tuna in the water, not the oil. But I was wondering, of course, I guess a lot of people think maybe a tuna is a mackerel. I don't know anything about
that is a healthier fish, as well as like rainbow trout and salmon, mackerel, herring, sardines, those type of things. And they also play into calcium as well, because some of these actually have edible bones in them. So that boosts the calcium level as well, just a little FYI. Anything else you guys wanted to say about the Western diet, or what else jumped out to you guys in particular? Because I know 3 of you guys also watched it. I could geek out and kind of bore you guys with a lot of stuff.
Let's see, Katie, what stood out to you?
The salt part, because I know it's bad for you, but I don't remember hearing it in the context of anti-inflammatory or pro-inflammatory. Like, did I maybe just miss it or just, assumed? But I don't remember hearing about salt before. Sugar, sure, and processed foods, but not like, I don't know. Is that something I've just kind of
I think you may have, I think sometimes you think about salt as being only related to high blood pressure and things
That's what
like
I
that.
was just gonna say.
Yep. And it is very related to the pro-inflammatory. So pro-inflammatory is bad, anti-inflammatory is good. So just to, I mean,
which sounds kind of weird. Pro is usually what you think of as good, right? And
I know.
is not, but
I know.
it's exactly the opposite.
Yep.
I know that. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Patrice.
Oh, I was going to say, I'm sorry. If salt is what sends my joints into swelling. I don't drink sodas anymore. When I cook, I use the no salt, and I even bake with it, and I don't see a difference. But I know that if we go out to dinner, because restaurants salt everything, and it doesn't matter what I order. I can order like a healthy salad and maybe a burger, sorry. And then the next morning I'll get up and boy, my joints are.
It also shows what they put into the meat as well, as far as the burger, because typically it's usually not just like the meat. It usually has lots of additives and things like that.
Yeah, and you've got the bread that's on top of it that has a lot of salt as well. So
yeah, exactly. One thing in particular that it talked about was, you know, salt. She said you just use more herbs, and I have an herb garden, and that's, although I have a salt problem. I mean, my husband like takes the salt shaker away from me because I know it, and it does add to my inflammation, and again, puffiness, like skin puffiness. I just retain water when I'm doing that as well.
Okay, Deb, I need you to say, I'm Deb, and I have a salt problem. I will be working on it to make it better.
I do, well, and I ebb and flow. So if I have fries, I've got to have salt, or like some chips. So like sweet stuff, I have no problem with. I can just have a bite and I can walk away. But man, salt, it's a rough one for me. One thing I do in particular that I cook with lemon and lime a lot, because that actually, I don't need to salt my food as much. Sometimes just salt does enhance flavor, but it just can be a teeny bit. I know I've got like a little salt bowl, and I just pinch as far as putting a little bit of salt on something for seasoning. That little bit enhances flavor, but you don't need like a huge 3 pinches. It can just be one.
Also, lemon to substitute for salad dressings is a good trick.
I do that all the time. Yep.
So what about sea salt? Because like I said, when I cook, and also the salt container that's on my kitchen table is the no salt substitute. But what about sea salt? She didn't even touch on that. So I was wondering your thoughts on that.
So again, a lot of it is preference, and sea salt is puffed up. So there's a lot of air in there. So it covers a lot more space versus the other kinds. Iodized salt, I like what you buy in the store in that little round container. I typically don't use that, just because I like to cook, and I do like sea salt better because it packs more of a punch with just a little bit for flavor. So that is, it is truly up to you. It doesn't ever say, I've read lots of articles on it, if one is better than the other. Iodized salt also has the iodine added, but if you eat a really well-balanced diet, you don't have to worry about getting a goiter or anything like that. So does anybody else have anything to add? I was going to
ask Leslie, because she hasn't talked yet.
Yeah.
Well, I'm vegan. I've been vegan for 2.5 years. And so I was happy to see that there was a slide on it. And it has honestly helped me so much. I didn't really expect that it would. And I had been vegetarian for, I don't know, like a long time before.
So you were vegetarian and then became vegan, right?
Yeah.
You want to explain to folks what the difference is?
So vegetarian, basically you don't eat meat. And then vegan, you don't consume Well, and depending on how vegan you are, you don't even wear any animal products, but you don't consume any animal products. So no eggs, no dairy, no fish, no meat, anything like that. But it has made such a big difference to me. And so I was really happy to see that, because I think sometimes doctors look at diets that they may view as restrictive and be like, no, you shouldn't be doing that. So I was happy to see that there was actually a positive plug for being vegan.
Yeah, I think that we've seen a lot over the last few years of the diet and exercise research coming up. And I just want to stress the word research, because when we were going 5 years ago, the whole thing was, well, there's not really any research on it, and clinicians need data. And if there's no data, then it kind of falls off. So I just wanted to mention how important the research is in order to have our rheumatologists and our medical professionals view it, you know, as in some cases they need that to be able to recommend.
And speaking of this research, there were some studies talking about the vegan diet. It said that it reduced morning stiffness, and it also improved the ESR blood level in RA, and a fasting post-vegan diet. So if you do a fast and then continue on with your vegan diet, that has shown to reduce symptoms and beneficial long-term effects in RA. Sorry, again, not SLE, but it's still RA. Most often, a lot of the research studies do focus on RA. So I apologize for that, but these are the studies that show related to that. It also decreased in swollen tender joints, pain, the CRP, and the ESR levels in with fasting followed by the vegan-based diet. So compared to they call it omnivorous diet, which again is eating whatever, it's eating dairy and meats and vegetables and fruits and everything like that. But it was really interesting to see that. And again, one slide was showing preference to the Mediterranean diet. I kind of try to stick close to the Mediterranean diet.
Yeah.
I like that it includes wine.
I know, and the red wine, there's a study based on it. And actually there were three things: the oily fish, the cacao, and red wine. So inside the skin of the grapes, it's rich in, I always say this wrong, flavonoids, which has very heavy anti-inflammatory properties as well. So yeah, I kind of like applaud having some red wine. And
well, I'm really glad to see that the research is starting to bulk up on that. And also I looked it up. It was debrief #1 that Patrice and I talked a little bit about the Mediterranean diet and inflammation as it was in regards to food and also exercise. So make sure to go back and check that. I think we could probably keep talking about this one for a long time. So in interest of time, if you have more questions or more information, we will be creating some type of takeaway documents from all of these. I mean, between everybody, it looks like we got like 15 pages. So we shouldn't have a problem.
I only got into
all of your questions.
5 more pages.
So we're going to move forward, and the way that this we will not break out into extreme conversation. That was the kind of our focus one that we wanted to do. We're going to give you some highlights now, just to tell you what's going on in regards to excuse me, treatments. And as we started with talking about this, Debrief is we are precision medicine and personalized medicine. So what Deb was talking about is personalized. So having that right holistic treatment plan for yourself. So what we're going to talk about a little bit here, just going to mention a couple of the treatments here that are about precision medicine. And then we're going to do the next debrief we do, which would be debrief #4. We're going to go into more specifics about the treatments that we're seeing coming out of the research on treatments. But as far as precision medicine specifically, and I'm going to preface this by giving you a little bit of history of what treat to target is. You might see it as T2T. If you ever see something on social media or what have you, that's what it is. It's treat to target. And essentially, back in around, what was it, around 2008, 10, somewhere in that, in the early 2000s, the model for treatment in rheumatology, it was a pyramid, and it started with diet, exercise. Let's see how that goes, and then we'll move to a DMARD, a methotrexate, a disease modifying agent. And then if that didn't work, we'll go to a biologic. So that was the pyramid. And then it kind of took off with this idea, well, what if we flip the pyramid and we treat to target? Meaning, instead of starting with diet and exercise, we start with a DMARD. And now, even since then, it kind of, there's some patients start off with a biologic and skip the DMARDs altogether. But in saying that, that's what we call treat to target. So instead of the wait and see, we are starting early. And what has happened over the last decade is now we're starting to see research into remission, because those patients that were treated early on are actually starting to show they can be pulled off of medications. So that is a trend that we started seeing in the research data starting last EULAR, actually. It was the first time, and you can see some of our go-to EULAR with Patrice and myself and Deb, and it was like, we said remission, what? Because we couldn't believe that it was actually, I thought I was, well, I probably will be on medication all my life because I was not early treated, but there's hope for those who are. So in saying that, I wanted to make sure we had that history. And as far as precision medicine, there was one study that 1,760 lupus patients, so that's a good margin with active disease, were studied. They identified new treatment targets. So when we, again, talk about targets, we're talking about precision medicine, things in the body, different pathways. So I'm not going to get into all of the specific cell names, but think about our biologics, and you'll see like TNFI, and which is inhibited certain things, certain cellular pathways that are happening. So they're finding those kind of targets. So being able to engineer medications to tackle different cells, different, you might hear like IL-17s or things like that. So they did this study with lupus patients, and they were able to find altered pathways and abnormalities in these different cells. And that just shows you that if they're able to get that finite, I mean, think about it. How many between all of us, how many treatments have you been on?
I've been on treatments for 39 years. So my goodness, I mean, it goes all the way back to gold treatment, gold shots. And yeah.
So, and the other part of this is the outcome of it, or the takeaway was that, quote unquote, understanding this can lead to better understanding of unique presentation and how some can respond better or worse than others. And I think that's what this is all about, is we've recognized, especially as an organization, some of the work we've done starting from 2015 really is all about understanding that there's unique presentation. We're not all the same, even if we have the same disease name. And there's a lot of different things that factor in: early treatment, comorbidities, which we'll talk about more here because that's a theme of EULAR, and how we're going to respond. I mean, I use this analogy sometimes. I think it's good here. Everybody here, you have like a favorite aspirin or a favorite cough medicine or something like that that's your go-to?
Yeah.
And then me too. And I will swear by it that it works better than any of them. I tried them all, and this one works the best. Yeah. But then you talk to somebody else and go, oh, no.
Yeah.
Romatized, that's the one. And you're like, oh, that did nothing for me. It's similar. So when I try to explain it to non-patients, that's an analogy that I tend to use because it's relatable. I think we all have that one, go-to that works best for us. And it's because we're all, week, and we all respond differently. So it's that same. So now that's what's moving forward into biologics. And then I just wanted to throw out too that there was another publication, and it was talking about psoriatic arthritis, a huge trend. How many sessions have we seen on? I mean, or that we've seen on the list?
6 to 8. Yeah.
Psoriatic arthritis.
I mean, that's not even talking about posters, you know.
Yeah. Oh, that's the, there's a big movement, a big focus onto psoriatic arthritis we're seeing, which is a shift from axial spondyloarthritis the last couple of years. They talk about that there was a study that they're showing for psoriatic arthritis, and one of the, they talk about the efficacy of these drugs that they're testing. And they talk about ACR 20. And I'm going to ask, not you, Deb, because you already know the answer. Yeah. And Patrice may remember from last year. When we talk about ACR 20, does everybody know what that is, or are you not 100% clear?
I think I remember it from when you explained it on a previous debrief.
Okay.
So do you want me to?
Sure,
see if I got
do it. Yeah.
Go, Katie.
So if I remember correctly, I don't remember what the ACR stands for exactly, but the 20, the number is
College of Rheumatology.
Okay, I thought it was two different things because I'm used to hearing that in a different context. But the number refers to the percentage that you increase. So like a 20% improvement. Is that?
Oh, that's it. Yeah.
Okay.
It's that easy. But you see it everywhere. And so whenever you are reading anything on clinical trials, they'll start at ACR 20. And in this one in particular, you had to reach a certain, you had to reach ACR 20 to even go to the next level. And I remember when ACR 20 was the big catchphrase about 10 years ago or so. And I was at a conference going, who cares about ACR 20? Like, if I'm only 20% better, that's nothing.
ACR 80. Yeah, I want the 80.
And so since about 10 years ago now, the targets are more of ACR 50, ACR 70. This one even, I think, went up to ACR 70 or even 90. But the point is that I wanted you all to know that the ACR standards are those kind of, the targets are, they're able to go higher than just your ACR, 20, et cetera. So that was really important. And then also for this particular one, they talked about, let's see, where is it? I'm sorry, I lost it. It just the quote, it will be extremely interesting to see if certain biomarkers and drug choice can be linked together to choose the best therapy to achieve minimal disease activity. And they also reference step therapy, which is an insurance issue here in the United States in particular, where you have to fail a drug before you go to the next one. And we have very specific projects here at our organization that we published a paper in 2015 called The Ethics of Step Therapy that founded by patients talking that we are not able to be, all of us, to be in clinical trials because we're not the general patient population. We might have comorbidity, so we're excluded. So those medications that are coming out, ACR 20, ACR 50, ACR 70 effective, if we can't be in the clinical trials, then who's to say that those treatments are going to be the best right for us? So there's an ethical kind of step up argument that we have incorporated into some research that we actually are recruiting for right now. So if you have rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, psoriatic arthritis, or axial spondylitis, or non-radiographic or ankylosing spondylitis, all falls under that umbrella. You can find more information on our website. It's called the Act 2 project. You can go aiarthritis.org/Act 2. We are recruiting for it, and it's to collect research to understand our individualities, and then the data is going to be used, hopefully, to influence public policy and show that we need our doctors to help with us make decisions on our therapies. So,
Tiffany, do you want to just point out when you say Act 2, do you mean the number 2?
Oh, I'm sorry. Good. It's called A Community Team is the full name, and it is the second version. We won an Innovation and Research Award in 2015 the first ever in immunology, yes, for the original ACT project, and this is the continuation. So yes, so let's move on. I'm actually, I'm gonna change, because I've been talking so much, I'm gonna change the order here, and I'm gonna jump over to Leslie, who saw, the only one who saw a session called RA Treatment, Educated Choice or Educated Guess. So I'm gonna flip it over to you and tell us a little bit about what you learned there.
All right, thank you. So in this session, they provided, there were 4 presenters, 2 provided case studies, and then 2 provided kind of where does the treatment go from here based on how the case study ended and treatments that had not been successful. And just a couple interesting things. One was that the idea of difficult to treat was brought up, and we heard that I think several times throughout EULAR. And based on the definition, you know, I was kind of left with feeling, well, aren't we all difficult to treat? And how useful of a model is that? Because, you know, the 2 case studies they had were newly diagnosed patients who were already falling into that. So I just found that really interesting. And then I also found it interesting that the second case study was of a male patient, and one of the things that was noted is that treatment was delayed because of family planning. And during the Q&A, one of the moderators mentioned that family planning had led to the delay of treatment, and wasn't that wasn't the smartest option. And to me, as somebody who is currently pregnant and has talked to my doctors about family planning for a long time, what the patient wants out of their life should matter. And, you know, my experience at EULAR, I think that there are some ideas that are very evolved. And as a patient, I was very impressed. But then there's all these moments when you're sitting there and you're like, oh yeah, these are doctors, these are medical professionals. And that's the lens that they're, you know, they're looking at everything through. And so I just thought that was really interesting. And then there was just one other thing I wanted to mention that I thought was interesting was during the Q&A, one of the presenters brought up how economic considerations figure in, and should policy be based on the evidence of the efficacy of treatment versus cost.
Oh, I have to go back and watch that one.
So I thought that was really interesting as well, because that's something that obviously for patients, we know that definitely can figure into treatment choices, but then to hear a doctor say, well, maybe as doctors, we should be pushing that if the evidence is for the treatment, that, you know, the policy and the cost of the medication should match that so that patients have access. So, you know, I think overall, you know, the meat of the section, I mean, the session, the case studies were interesting, but I think it was just kind of these other things that popped up, talking about quality of life versus side effects, and just always keeping in mind what the patient wants, what their goals are, what their life plans are, and how that figures in. So it, you know, overall, I thought it was pretty good. Like I say, there were things brought up that, you know, as doctors, as presenters, I was like, but then I was also like, oh, wow, you're talking about this. So.
Wow, that's a great one. I have to go back and that's what happens though. There's so many, you start hearing about it and then it's like, oh, I have to, you know, that one's a good one. But it definitely we call it research advocacy. That's the term that we coined at our organization. But that's the point, is that if the research is there, what we found in the Ethics of Step Therapy paper was essentially that even though it appears that everything is based on cost, in reality, the way the insurance companies choose, they justify it, they justify the cost by citing credible research and safety efficacy in the research. So if the research isn't, the more research into the actual treatment that we have, theoretically, that is the key to bypassing step therapy. And so, and we have to pat ourselves on the back because patients are the ones that figured that out.
Agreed.
So, but that's what happens when you get together and you talk and you compare notes. Patients have that perspective of a missing gap that others just can't necessarily see. So that was great. Thank you, Leslie.
I go back to her point about the poor gentleman that chose to, go not be on treatment. That, again, as a patient, that just kills me. I mean, I had to do the same thing when we chose to get pregnant, and I had to be off medications for months before we could even start trying and things like that. But holy smokes. But, in coming back around full circle, we also, after we did have our son, we waited a year and then we tried to have another child. And I was not doing well. I was like, I could barely lift Jacob up. I'd have to put him on the floor to even put clothes on him because I couldn't put my arms up over my head to pull clothes off or anything like that. So I was struggling, and I finally had my rheumatologist, who at that point, we had a really good relationship. He basically said, Deb, you're not even healthy enough to get pregnant, which again spoke volumes. And it was time to go back on therapy and then revisit it later, which again, we never did because we got one and done. And again, greatest gift and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, all the planning that goes, and then for the doctors to say that wasn't a good choice. Well, I'll deal with the implications later.
Wow.
Yeah, that's crazy. That just resonates. And I'm sure it resonated with you too, being pregnant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it definitely did. And I think, it also resonated with me just with other choices I was making when I was first diagnosed and things my rheumatologist was telling me. And, it's like 13 years later, it's like, we have to get past this attitude. At some point, what's important to the patient has to matter more than, a doctor checking boxes and a patient being in remission. If they want to live a certain life and they're able to do that, that's what should be important. So,
yeah. I had my children long before I was diagnosed, but I do have a good friend who has RA. She's probably about 10 years younger than I am. And when she was 21, she consulted, this was many years ago. So it's probably maybe a little bit different for Leslie now with all the new research and therapies. But when she was 21, she consulted with her rheumatologists and doctors and studied all the research. And she decided that she just didn't think it was a good idea for her to ever have children. And so she decided at 21 to have a hysterectomy. But yeah, and she said the hoops that she had to go through because people would look at her and say, are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure? But that's what she chose.
Wow. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to toggle this into another session. I'm not going to do an overview of the session. I just want to, again, put off some takeaway points here that I think are important for patients. And keep in mind, these sessions that we're going to, there is a whole segment at EULAR called PARE, which is geared towards patients. It makes the EULAR Congress unique to the ACR, the American College of Rheumatology Scientific Congress or conference that happens every year as well, because there's not a patient pillar at ACR, not yet. But there's not, and so the fun part for us sort of at EULAR is there is a whole track for patients. Now, in saying that, the other ones are geared towards health professionals. So when you're watching these, one of the things I know Leslie had pointed out is, and I think I could have been Katie too, I'm sorry, we were talking beforehand, was that, I think you don't have a patient perspective necessarily in these, and that's where we're filling in the gap as well. And this is a good example of it. So there was, this session interested us as an organization specifically because it's about early diagnosis. And we were really founded on this whole, not only just bringing this group of diseases together that were autoimmune, autoinflammatory plus arthritis, but also we figured by doing that, we could expedite early detection, which then leads to essentially better outcomes when you look at the whole equation that we put together. So anything early diagnosis, or what we call under the umbrella undifferentiated disease, we are extremely interested in, because most of us have been there. Most of us have been undifferentiated. Or even if we got the label or we didn't get the label, we had some length of time before we were diagnosed and nobody knew what we had. Now that doesn't happen to everybody. Some people get diagnosed immediately, but we know a large percentage do not. And for that reason, we give them a home because we understand. And this one caught my eye because there were two different terms that came up. We try to collect the terms like undifferentiated connective tissue disease, undifferentiated spondyloarthritis, inflammatory polyarthritis. We have a list on our website of several. And then I hear this one was clinically suspect, I'm gonna mess it up, arthralgia, which is CSA. So that is also before you actually, even the arthritis is recognized as the disease. This is like pre-arthritis, we suspect arthritis. So that was a new term for me. And that caught my eye. And also need to look in this early arthritis recognition clinic that the study came from, because I didn't even know there was such a thing as an early arthritis recognition clinic.
Did they say where that was? I mean, what?
I'll be able to, it's somewhere in Europe.
Okay.
So I'm going to look in, I'm going to look into that. But I don't know what year this was, but it had to be several, because they talked about the progression. So is people living with the diseases, just think about this. So the person presents with symptoms for 2 months, and morning stiffness for at least 60 minutes, negative family history of rheumatoid arthritis. They did not say other autoimmune diseases, though, I want to point out. They just said RA. Experience difficulty with dressing in the morning, no tender or swollen joints, but the right side of the squeeze test, when they squeeze your hands, is positive. So that to me was a little confusing too, because it said no tender or joint, or swollen joints, but when they squeeze the test,
there's a machine you squeeze too. So I'm wondering if that's the squeeze test they mean by your hands.
Yeah, it's funny because describes exactly what I went through before my diagnosis.
Well, and then there's more. Wait for it. So then the ACPA test, which is, I have to look at my list because I always butcher this one too, citrullinate, I can't say it, ACPA, protein antibodies, which is a biomarker that we talk about precision medicine, positive. And the ultrasound shows signs of synovitis. So there is some inflammation that's visible, but so they are diagnosed with the CSA. And so they kind of put the question, this recent onset positive ACPA, some inflammation on the ultrasound, and the question they put out to the doctor community was, what is the diagnosis and how should we treat this patient? Just by what you all know is living with these diseases, what are your thoughts? Anything? Anyone have anything? You don't have to.
I think this is what we talked about earlier. It's like, ask the patient what they want. I think the bigger discussion was, should you treat early? Should you wait till you know more? And the conversation as far as, when to start treatment. But like my big thing was ask the patient. If you're considering, you know, long-term side effects or, you know, even immediate side effects or
yep.
any kind of anything, like it's all about the patient. Ask that person, you know, discuss it with them, you know, pros and cons, different options, and just see what they want.
So what happened was, even though there were these patterns, symptoms, signs of RA, because there were no swollen joints, they were not diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. So
because based on the guidelines,
based on the swollen joints, it does say though that that their experts are highly effective in differentiating this CSA from other causes, and that leads you to the question of what do we do? You know, if they're suspect, and it could lead. So they basically showed a study where 40% of the people did not progress to rheumatoid arthritis, which is actually in keeping with a study we did in 2013-14, where we came up with 54% of people were either diagnosed initially with an undifferentiated umbrella or went a certain length of time with no label to it, but still had the same symptoms. So it technically would fall under that umbrella. And so but that's still, I agree with you all, that leads to the question. So they asked, do we treat this patient? And theoretically, when you have undifferentiated and it doesn't fall on a treatment guide, right? The question becomes, am I over treating? So if I treat with a DMARD, am I over treating this person? I can share my personal situation, like Patrice said, sounds a lot like me. I didn't have the positive blood work though, which made it even worse. But yeah. I didn't have swelling till at least 8 years in. And I had always have positive blood work. And I was initially diagnosed with undifferentiated. And the rheumatologist at the time said, I'm going to wait and watch because I cannot justify potentially harming you by over treating you with strong medications, which is exactly what they talked about in here. Now, interesting enough, the conclusion here was do not treat. Mm-hmm. And I don't know. As a person living with these diseases, that's what happened to me. They said, I'm going to wait and watch. And guess what happened? I got way worse. Yeah. And okay, maybe I'm the 60% that, you know, I'm not in the 40% that didn't, but that 60%, we deserve an opportunity to at least make a choice with our rheumatologist. And it's not hindsight is 2020, because I wanted treatment. Right. I asked for treatment and I was denied.
And it goes against early treatment, you know, it goes against that, you know, as far as what we stand for and everything. Yeah, you know, that is a tough one. I'm really blessed that I have a rheumatologist that as she's taking notes as we're talking, but possible treatment. She'll put all these different options out there and puts it back to me. And then I can ask her opinion and weigh in that way. So it is completely shared decision-making, which I appreciate. And it's been like that for years versus, you know, but this is hard. I feel like this person should have been treated.
Me too. Me too. So my first rheumatologist, he's now retired. When he said, well, I'm pretty sure that you have this. And he said, I'd like to start you on treatment, but the treatment that I would like to start you on will not be covered by your health plan. So we'll start you on something else. So it came down to cost.
Yeah.
Not what.
Because there wasn't the data there.
Right.
To override the decision.
Yeah, of course, I didn't know anything either.
Which is exactly why more studies and the precision medicine portion of it is so crucial, because if the other clinical trials recruit the general patient population.
Right.
And that you cannot have a comorbidity.
Right.
Often have to have positive blood markers. So they have something, you have to be at a baseline so that you can track it. But that excludes so many of us. So until more precision medicine and more precise research is coming out, you know, then, which, I mean, I could go off on all this kind of thoughts of why sometimes legislation stymies innovative treatments, because think about it, if the innovative treatments work, then it's going to essentially override the cost argument. But I could go on and on that one, but I won't. Okay, so I wanted to throw that out there because we can never forget how we all started, and we can never forget the people who are still struggling for answers and fighting for relief. And even though I respect and understand why the outcome of this session was we wait, I'm going to challenge it. That's all. I'll leave it at that. Before we wrap up, Deb, you wanted to just have a couple bullet points from something that you saw also, which is on tapering the treatment and withdrawal. So why don't you just say a little bit about that before we close up?
So this study was based, it was called RETRO, R-E-T-R-O, and they called it the rheumatoid arthritis in ongoing remission. And basically what they determined was a lot of the things that we've all been talking about, you know, showing that there is feasibility in having DMARD tapering. And also one of the big points was taper wisely. Think about how long the person's had the disease, the duration of time. So whether they're newly diagnosed or if they've had it for 15, 20, 30 years, their antibody status. So whether they're like rheumatoid positive or rheumatoid negative. Also think about, you know, how long they've had remission and the duration and the depth of that, things like that. So all the same reoccurring things that we've been seeing over and over with, you know, remission. And this is one study that was done, and it has some of this very similar takeaways.
Yeah, I think that's such a great sort of ending as well, because that is technically almost a cross between precision, you know, and personalized. Because how do you taper to the person's journey, their duration? It's just something that I'm really, as a person living with this disease, is so thrilled to see the pathway of where research is going and focusing on that individuality from, you know, the treatments themselves, but also preferences, shared decision making, which we've talked about. That's coming up in many guidance, many guidelines. Saw it in COVID as well. So great wrap up there. I think that we have come to an end of this debrief on precision and personalized medicine. We do have more debriefs coming. We're going to record another one on treatments. We have, what else? We've got to do COVID still a little bit, but I think we're going to blend that in with one. There's a whole track on communication that we're really interested in, on communicating with your rheumatologist and your healthcare team. And that one also, we'll talk about shared decision-making in there. And then there's a whole track on patient collaboration in research that I know all of us are really interested in, and our organization does a lot in that space. So that is really in our wheelhouse, and we're super excited to I know some of you already attended them. I have not, but I will be, and we'll be reporting on those as well. So still things to come, things to report back. Join the conversation, pull up a seat, and have your seat at the table too. I mean, this is how we, as you can see through conversation, as people bring the lived experience to the table, that's how we identify the gaps and solve the problems. So happy that you all have come, and all of you, thank you for going with us to EULAR. The journey is still ongoing. So we'll close out this one.